and then I'll start going into my own experience. So, as Louisa was talking, there was this radical group called the Front de Libération de Québec. The FLQ came up with the thesis that class struggle is the most important struggle, and they worked with groups such as the American Indian Movement, the Black Panthers, the Young Patriots, and other people that were realizing that they were getting fucked up by the system. A lot of FLQ people were getting arrested for no good reason. So people who were 18, 19, who loved Che Guevara, decided to take direct action to free their comrades. They kidnapped two people, which was, sorry?
Pierre Laporte?
Yeah, Pierre Laporte, and the other one who was the Minister of Unemployment and Assimilation, I forget his name. So these guys were kids, pretty much, who wanted to do something. They were seeing their friends getting killed, they were seeing people being napalmed in Nepal, they were seeing what was happening in Palestine. They had ties with the PFLP, and they were not going to be good Germans sitting outside of the gates of Auschwitz just because it was legal. So once they kidnapped these two people, they had some very simple demands. Their demands were free our comrades, give us a bunch of gold so we can give to the poor people, and read our manifesto on the air. The manifesto, when it was read on the air, millions of people in Montreal were ranting, FLQ, FLQ. I love the FLQ manifesto. One of my favorite parts was, soon there will be no more Westmounts. Westmount was like the rich place in Quebec where all the English lived and made all the decisions and everything. So one of them was going to be released, but he was an asshole, and he jumped out a window and was bleeding to death. And at this point in time, Trudeau Sr. called martial law, and they couldn't just take him to the hospital, so they put him in a car and said, this is where he is. And they were so demonized. When they were put on trial, they were asked, are you guilty or not guilty? They said, we are responsible, because they took responsibility for the action. The other group were able to make a deal to go to Cuba, which was a revolutionary country that was supporting many people such as Assad Shakur. After the October crisis, where hundreds of thousands of people as far away as Vancouver, who had nothing at all to do with the FLQ, were getting arrested or shot on sight. In the MacDonald report on the wrongdoings of the RCMP, there's a 5th volume about the CPCML, which is still not released. The CPCML was one of the parties that came out after the dissolution of the FLQ. So after the end of the FLQ, there were like 5 parties: the Workers' Communist Party, CPCML, and a couple other parties. University of Waterloo had a strong basis of the CPCML, which had groups such as the East Indian Defense Committee, Anti-Fascist Committee, Anti-Zionist Committee, because Zionism in many ways is a form of fascism, and Ann Hansen, who was a friend of myself and my mom, started a group called the Squamish Five. Basically what they believed was indirect action. They realized that the state cannot be reformed. They realized that the state cannot be changed, and so they started a guerrilla group. One of the things that they did was the woman in the group started the Women's Fire Brigade, What they did was there was this place called Red Hot Videos that would sell snuff films. Those of you that don't know what snuff films is basically torturing and murdering poor street women. So what they did was they kept on blowing up Red Hot Videos until they went out of business, which I think is a very positive thing. Eventually they all got arrested for bombing the Lytton bomb factory, because at this point in time it was a Cold War, and all it would take is like some crazy person to push a button and the world was at war. A friend of mine in the KGB was telling me, I'm from Eastern Europe and I'm half gypsy. I hate the word Roma because it was created at a conference. My tribe is the tribe of the wolf, and my mom's other tribe, like my mom's grandfather, was the tribe of the stick and the pen. So I'm both a writer, and the thing about a wolf is a wolf never thinks of himself. A human always wants the biggest chunk of meat, you know what I mean? The wolf always puts the pack first. And so that's kind of how I was raised. So yeah, Ann Hansen got arrested, got a life sentence, and she came to speak at the university because she was in the same program that I was in. Now, when I was in grade 9, I had to do an essay on the FLQ, and I was like, damn, they're right. The English government is killing native people, is oppressing Quebecois, and a poor Quebec worker has a lot more in common with a black worker than a white boss. And so I started with a quote from Charles Gagnon, who was like one of the FLQ's thinkers that didn't sell out to start the PQ. And it said, the violence of the state will breed the violence of the people. So that's how I started my essay. It was very, very well written. I handed it again in university and got an A. But because I went to St. Mary's, St. Jerome's, which later I learned was a Jesuit school, I got an F for not having Catholic values. So I told my mom I was a Marxist. My mom said, no, you're not. Because a lot of my family's been in concentration camps as well as gulags, because as Primo Levi says, anyone who survived the Holocaust must have done something wrong. So after World War II, a lot of people, some communists, many fascists were put into gulags. And you guys might just be like, oh, evil Stalin, whatever. Well, war is war, and the Holocaust was one of the most brutal systemic war there was. So my mom didn't want me getting into politics. I would be going up putting posters to organize stuff. My mom would follow me and rip them off. Eventually she figured out I was going to be a communist. I caught the political bug, and so she started really supporting me and stuff. So I was in grade 9, and St. Jerome's and St. Mary's was over there. So we weren't allowed to smoke on school property. So we smoked across the street at the back of City Hall. At this time there was the Heritage Front, and there was this place called Eastern European Sound, where the Heritage Front would have their meetings. And their whole thing was equal rights for whites. But when they said equal rights for whites, they weren't, first of all, white doesn't exist. There's such a thing as Polish pride. There's such a thing as Russian pride, as French pride. What the fuck is white? No, seriously. White is like a construction that was constructed to make the Irish and the blacks and to make the indentured servants and slaves fight against each other. They could be I might be exploited, I might be this, but at least I'm not a slave. So like white's a fucking social construct with real serious thing. But this whole equal white for white thing was just like, we want it to be the 1930s all over again. And so this guy, Paul McGraw, who was like a really big neo-Nazi, Sieg-Heiled me right in the smoke pit. Across the street, all the teachers and everyone was there. I said, fuck you. I used to be a very short and skinny guy. He kicked the fuck out of me. He literally kicked the shit out of me. I had to walk the whole day through school with shit in my pants because I had too much pride to, admit that I got the shit kicked out of me. No one did anything. A couple days later, someone said, I want to start a group called Anti-Racist Action. I'm like, what do you guys do? We fight Nazis. I'm like, I want to join. And I grew up in a poor area. At that point in time, the Cedar Hill community, there was a war on drugs led by Karen Taylor Harrison, who was both a city councilor and a landlord. So the war on drugs was basically, if you're a student, you want to trip out on LSD or ecstasy or ayahuasca or find God, that's fine. If you want to go snort a couple lines of coke at a party, that's fine. But if you're in a poor neighborhood and you're like, chopping a couple pieces here and there, we're going to kick the shit out of you. If you're not selling drugs, but you have a hoodie or something, we're going to shoot you, we're going to beat you. I remember at one point in time, my neighbors were out drinking beer. I was drinking beer with them. My mom had